We're also doing a video about a lovely print by Richard Demarco, who is a Scottish artist of Italian descent and born in 1930, and he used to come a lot to Malta in the 70s, especially when this is from. This is probably from the mid-70s. So this is a limited edition print, and it is printed on artisan paper, which will be handmade and air dried, and it has the characteristic torn edge, which you only get to see if you don't use the normal mount everyone else uses. And it has the characteristic impression mark, meaning you have a high mount and then it goes down, and this impression, the plate, is sunken where the ink was literally pushed on with a roller and a plate. So it's an oil print on good paper. It's not an inkjet print, it's not a G-clay print. Most of the prints nowadays in the shops are inkjet prints. They call them G-clay prints. This is a pencil title saying SENGLEA Malta, which is part of the area around Grand Harbour. It's number 24 of 75, and it is signed in Richard Demarco's own hand. So it shows Senglea, and it shows a streetscape from the rooftops. So the perspective is from coming up, and you have a wonderful sort of bird's eye view of the town. If you were to turn this print upside down, you will have a sort of reverse perspective, and you will sort of see what a streetscape looks like from the road. It's difficult to see, but if you sort of persist, you'll see what I'm talking about. So it's technically quite a good item. I think that perspective is really, really important and useful. So we have a lovely, unusual perspective, and the viewpoint is high, and that's quite an unusual technique. And we have another one by this artist in Valletta where he's done a similar thing. So I like the print for two reasons. First of all, it is an old limited edition representing Malta. The other reason I like it is because it reminds me of when I was visiting Malta as a child. I would stay in my grandmother's flat in Reseda, and when it was unbearably hot, or we were bored of being inside, me and my brothers would go onto the roof, and it was so high, we were conscious of how dangerous it was, and we would go up to get a breeze on the whole, and usually on the roof, even in the height of the summer, there was quite a good breeze. But there were three things about the rooftops in my mind, and this captures it quite well. The first thing is that in those days people used to use washing lines to dry their clothes, and it seems obvious, but this roofscape is full of washing lines, and people, the Maltese and the visitors alike, would use the sun. Here you have got a lot of stuff on the lines drying, and we were, as English visitors, we were really surprised how quickly things would dry. If my mother or grandmother took a load of wet clothes that had been washed up onto the roof, and they started to hang the stuff up in the scorching heat. They did it in the daytime, in the middle of the summer, and they started to hang with pegs the clothes. By the time they had got to the end of the washing line, the things they first hung were dry, only in a few minutes. It was incredible, because in England you can wait a day or two for things to dry on a washing line. So that's the first thing, the washing lines. The second thing is that there were a lot of pigeon fanciers. That's an English expression for pigeon keepers. I don't know whether the Maltese were keeping the pigeons to eat. I suspect they might have been, but the pigeons, I think, were kept for racing and as a hobby. And on many roofs in Reseda, there were some really big pigeon lofts, which were sometimes timber, sometimes made of stone, and they were often painted dark green, and they had a door and they had a window and a vent, and they were big things. Some of the people had a small amount of pigeons, maybe 10. Some of the people had 100 pigeons, and at night they would come home, go up to the roof, let the pigeons out. The pigeons would make that lovely noise when the bird flaps its wings, and they would all flap around. You could hear the noise. It's just like a zip sound. Even if you're inside, you could hear the pigeons take off and fly in a loop. And they fly around in quite a dense cloud. and other people in the same region, area, parish would have the same, and their pigeons would be flying around, but the pigeons would stay separate. And though the birds were captive, they didn't really want to escape. They didn't try and escape. They were waiting for their food, and when the owners wanted the birds back, they would shake the corn in a bucket, and the birds would all come back and pop down back into their loft. So there were pigeons. There was washing, and the other thing there was the antennae for TV. So you'll see here a lot of masts. Now, the people in Malta wanted to watch the television from Italy, of course they did, and Sicily, as well as the local channels. And in those days, the higher your mast was, the better TV reception you'd get. And there were so many masts, you wouldn't believe it. It was like a thicket, a forest. And it wasn't a matter of there being one antennae per house, per building, because if you had a building with 8 flats, each flat would have their own antennae. And if they had a new antennae, they would just leave the old one hanging off the side. So there might be 10 or 20 on each building with boosters, and these are long tubes of galvanised antennae, and there are so many, it was incredible. At the time, the English people coming in didn't really understand it, and we all thought, oh God, how ugly and how stupid, disfiguring their beautiful buildings. But when I see a photograph now of how it looked, it's so picturesque. Even though it's only 50 years ago, it's so picturesque and so emblematic of those times. Of course, when the internet came, when the cable came, and satellite came, and video as well, they took them down. In fact, most of them have gone. But there were so many. Cannot even begin to describe how many there were. Okay, so we've talked about the 3 things you'd find on the roofs, apart from the cats, and we've talked about Richard Demarco's print. There are some spots, which is mould or some sort. The collectors don't want any spots, but I quite like spots. It shows it's an old thing. And we use a cream on the background, which makes them look less obvious. We put it in a lovely box frame to keep it flat. And this is for sale in Malta if anyone wants to dip in and have a go at it. Thank you.